Alright, this video was requested by one of the commenters. This is going to be ranking the various upgrade paths. You can notice right off the bat that I'm not using Tier Maker. That's because no such tier list exists on Tier Maker, and I'm not making a new Twitter account. I actually tried to make a new Twitter account, but that's not an option, so. Uh, yeah, you can see a little bit of my art on the right hand side here because there is no lightning ember, so I had to kind of improvise. Hopefully that doesn't detract too much from the list. The ratings of these are going to be based on PvE exclusively, and um, it's going to be involving things like routing, how hard it is to actually attain the certain weapon type, and availability of upgrade materials as well as actual damage output. Alright, so stepping right into it, this is the very large ember. This is how you upgrade weapons to plus 15, and that one's pretty easily S tier. Most of the other embers are going to be compared to this ember. This ember in and of itself is uh, strong by itself, but also it's the reason that a lot of other embers are not. Okay. Twinkling Titanite. Some Twinkling Titanite weapons can be buffed with weapon buffs. Other Twinkling Titanite weapons are just extremely strong in their own right. And again, because this is a PvE tier list, all the Black Knight weapons are, stronger than they might otherwise be. Um, Twinkling Titanite is also very easy to get a hold of. Every Crystal Lizard is guaranteed to drop, I think, 1 to 2, maybe 2 Twinkling Titanite. In addition to the fact that if you don't already have enough Twinkling Titanite to fully upgrade a weapon, it drops off of the giants, the halberd giants in Anor Londo, as well as being sold by the blacksmith in Anor Londo. And there are various other enemies throughout the game that drop it as well. It's probably the easiest to obtain upgrade material. It's not too expensive. It's extremely common. Very easy to get a hold of. I would actually, if it weren't for, well, it doesn't matter. Ignore the order in the tier. I think Twinkling Titanite is actually the best, but that's whatever. Lightning upgrade weapons. Lightning upgrade is probably the best uh, of the elemental upgrades. There are a lot of enemies that are weak to lightning, and in addition to that, you can fully upgrade it when you get to Anor Londo. Um, and also, you don't need an Ember. You just need to make it to Anor Londo and have a plus 10 weapon, which is easier said than done sometimes, but it can be done. Titanite chunks are easy to come by. I think I mentioned that already. Titanite slabs also pretty easy to get. Generally speaking, you'd only want to use an elemental upgrade if you're using like a heavier weapon because of the way that defense calculations work. It's just more beneficial to use them with higher overall attack rating. So low attack rating weapons kind of suffer quite a bit from split damage. But if you're going to go with elemental damage, then lightning is one of your best options. This is the large magic ember. Large magic is poopy garbage. It is complete trash. So the difference between enchanted and large magic is that enchanted has a higher intelligence scaling. Pretty sure that's the only difference. And so why would you ever use large magic? It's even arguably easier to get the enchanted ember because it's just in the Darkroot Forest. You don't actually need to defeat any bosses other than the Asylum Demon to go get it. Also, blue Titanite slabs are annoying, and blue Titanite chunks are equally, if not more so, annoying. So I would say just don't use this. Also, the split damage is magic, and it prevents your weapon from being buffed with a weapon buff. So that's just terrible. There are a lot of things that are resistant to magic, and in addition to things being resistant to magic, if you were going to use a weapon that did split physical and magic damage, you would want it to be split pure physical on the weapon and magic damage from the buff exclusively. So yeah, don't use it. Unless you really want to for some reason, but can't imagine why you would. Large Flame is an inferior Chaos Ember. Uh, Unlike Lightning, there are some enemies that are resistant to. So there's I think like one enemy that's resistant to lightning. But as far as large fire goes, uh, by the time you have a fire upgraded weapon, you're probably past most of the things that are resistant to fire. But at the same time, you're still better off with like lightning. And this is barely taking into account the DLC. In the DLC, the S tier moves up, and all these other tiers move down somehow. But yeah, as far as the like, you don't really want a fire upgrade weapon, and if you're gonna get a fire upgrade weapon, go with Chaos because it's similar damage output at 0 humanity, and it only goes up from there. The raw upgrade path is kind of a meme, but it's actually not entirely. It's the only reason I put it in D instead of F is because you can still buff it. So even if it kind of sucks, I'm pretty sure that across the board, raw weapons do less damage fully upgraded than fully upgraded plus 15 weapons without any stat investment. So there's pretty much no reason to ever use it, but you can still buff it. So it's not literally completely useless. It kind of is though. There's a better alternative. If for some reason you never want to collect a Titanite chunk in your entire life, or you don't want a slab to be required to fully upgrade your weapon, then raw is not that bad. Also, yeah, I guess that's one thing to say in favor of the raw upgrade path is that it really requires very very little in the way of materials. You only need your weapon to be +5, and then you can uh, like get it to +5 raw really easily, but it does require the large ember, I think. At least I'm assuming that's what I meant by this image. So yeah. Large divine ember. The large divine ember has one singular purpose, and that's for later new game runs where you want skeletons to stay dead. Other than that, kind of pointless. I wouldn't use it. If you're a faith build, then just, I guess you could use a divine weapon until you're at the boss, and then you can buff your normal weapon, but your +15 should be doing fine, honestly. Sunlight Blade is really strong. But you could use it. It stops skeletons from respawning. That's kind of helpful. Yeah, there are probably other occult type enemies that take bonus damage from it. Maybe the birds or Priscilla or something. But otherwise, I wouldn't use it. The Enchanted Ember is very marginally better than the Large Magic Ember because it scales better with intelligence and therefore does slightly more damage. But also, just use a +15 weapon and upgrade it, or use the Moonlight Greatsword or Moonlight Butterfly Horn. Also, you don't actually ever need the Enchanted Ember to get a fully upgraded enchanted weapon, because there's an enchanted falchion in the Duke's Archives. Basically, it's just not very good. And again, the split damage weapons are, you would want to put them on heavier weapons because of the way that AR scaling works, and defense calculations and all that jazz, but you don't really have the stat investment to use a heavy weapon when you're also an int build because you'll be slow. I don't know, it's obnoxious. Like, you can't put that many points into endurance and also strength and also intelligence and still have, solid damage output. This Ember is very easy to obtain though. Almost like it's so far above the Large Magic Ember that it's not even funny. But, that's fine. Demon Titanite. Weapons that upgrade on the Demon Titanite path. This includes boss weapons as well as other uh, certain demon type weapons. Uh, is the A tier going to be empty if I put this in S tier? I guess if there was an upgrade path that belonged in A tier, it's this one, because the yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine. The Demon Titanite weapons they have like two things going for them. One is that um there's a lot of versatility kind of in the group of weapons that upgrade with Demon Titanite. And the other thing is that once you hit Anor Londo, you just start finding it everywhere. There's a Titanite demon. There's a bunch in multiple chests. It's all over the place in Anor Londo. And if for whatever reason you really need to rush that fully upgraded Demon Titanite weapon, then you can just backtrack to Sen's Fortress. And those Titanite demons are not the best ones to kill in my opinion. I always just go to Izalith and kill the one on the bridge. But if you're really strapped for Demon Titanite and you need it immediately, you can try to cheese the ones in Sen's Fortress and have a fully upgraded Demon Titanite weapon in Anor Londo by the time you get to Anor Londo. You might even be able to have it before you get to Anor Londo, depending on how you play. But as far as routing, this one's really nice because it's really easy to just pick up a ton of it. The Dark Ember. This one is another faith scaling split damage thingy, but it doesn't have the benefit of not causing skeletons to not respawn. So that's kind of unfortunate, but it does extra damage against certain types of enemies. Like, I'm pretty sure Ornstein and Smo take bonus damage from it. If I had to guess, I would say Gwyn probably takes extra damage from it. Even Gwendolyn, maybe. But that's very few enemies. Also, Silver Knights and like the Halberd Knights and the such like. But I think that's pretty much it. And otherwise, it doesn't really do very much. Technically, you can get it before you progress further through Anor Londo. Like, you can go into the painting and retrieve it from the painting early. But I wouldn't do that. And also, white Titanite chunks and white Titanite slabs can be kind of annoying. White Titanite chunks not too hard to acquire, but there's only, I think, one guaranteed white Titanite slab. There might be another one, but I don't know where it is. There's for sure one in the Tomb of the Giants, though. And then white Titanite chunks, you just have to kill the bone towers. And depending on what your build looks like, that's easy or obnoxious. Generally speaking, I think it's better to not use that. Crystal Ember is like the only other weapon that's a contender for F tier. Except I'm going to put it in D tier because Crystal Ember actually has a use case. I almost want to put it in C tier. Yeah, I'm going to put it in C tier. Because the Crystal Ember has like one thing going for it, which is that if on new game so there's two things about the Crystal Ember that are kind of cool. One is that the durability refills every time you upgrade a crystal weapon. So the downside of crystal weapons is that it subtracts like 90% of your weapon's total durability, and it can no longer be repaired. But it can be repaired if you adjust it to the next upgrade tier whenever it's about to break. Or I think you can do it even after it breaks. I wouldn't use it as your main weapon because it's going to break and then you'll have no weapon. But if you use it for bosses, like you have one plus 15 weapon and one crystal weapon, and you use it exclusively for bosses, especially on higher new games, it might actually make things easier. It might make it a little easier to keep up with damage output, and you won't really notice the durability drain. It is expensive in terms of resources, but you really you'll have plenty of Titanite slabs to sustain um, like crystal weapon making. You can either chop them up into chunks at Framped if you really don't want to farm chunks, or you can collect chunks from the various places that you can get chunks from and just use the slabs for this. So it has that, but I would say don't use it as a primary weapon type. Also, you get it really late into the game, so yeah. And then the last one is the Chaos Ember. The Chaos Ember is kind of tough because it belongs either in C tier or in B tier. I don't really want to put it next to Lightning though, because it's not really as good as Lightning. It just kind of almost seems like it might be, but I'll put it there anyway, with the disclaimer that the Chaos upgrade path is not as good as the Lightning path for PvE purposes exclusively, because so many things are weak to Lightning. The Chaos Ember is not as far out of the way as the large Fire Ember, but it is very difficult to obtain if you don't know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, there are several pretty easy ways to get your hands on the Chaos Ember. It's in the Fire Lake in the Demon Ruins, at the bottom of the Demon Ruins, guarded by a couple of Taurus demons. You can, with the Gold Hemmed set and like a few other boosts to fire resistance, you can probably obtain it. You actually don't need the orange charred ring is what I'm getting at, but it's extremely easy to obtain once you have the orange charred ring. Red Titanite is pretty annoying. Getting red Titanite chunks and red Titanite slabs is something that I don't really want to do. Oh crap, I did forget one. Okay, here. I knew I was going to forget one. Let's change the color of this. We'll make it gray. And move it over here. No. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This is... this is... Text small. Dragon scales. Holy moly, are dragon scales just the most fucking obnoxious thing in the entire game. Dragon scales drop off of undead dragons, certain dragon type bosses like the Gaping Dragon, Calamite, and the such like. There's one obtainable in a chest in Blighttown. There might be others elsewhere. There are probably some in Ash Lake. The Hydras drop them, so you might be thinking, what do you mean? They're everywhere. They must be so easy to obtain. Not in the slightest. Dragon scales and dragon upgrading weapons are like the most obnoxious thing in the entire game. It takes, if you want to farm them off drakes, it takes forever, and the drakes are not pushovers. Like, with a magic build, you might be able to one-shot them, but otherwise, they're pretty clumped together, and they're pretty out of the way, and they're really quite a low drop rate as well. Also, a lot of the dragon weapons aren't that good. Most of the dragon weapons don't scale with any stats. Most of the dragon weapons require very high stat investment to even wield them. And also most of them can't be buffed. So there are a lot of reasons not to use dragon scale upgrading weapons. You can't purchase them anywhere at all. Each upgrade tier is extremely expensive, and you just need way too many of them to actually upgrade a weapon. My most recent run was a sorcerer run, and I finally got my hands on the Moonlight Greatsword, and then the next like 2 hours at least was spent first figuring out how to farm the drakes in Valley of Drakes, and secondly actually doing it. But it's really a massive pain in the ass. It's far more effort than it's worth. I would highly recommend not doing it. The only reason it's not an F tier is because the weapons are not completely useless. I don't think it really belongs with the literal worst Ember in the entire game. But just know that Otherwise, I would put it in F tier. Realistically, it belongs in F tier. It's super annoying. Basically, that's going to conclude this video. If you have any recommendations, things you'd like to see, let me know in the comments. I will make anything that strikes my fancy, and I'll even put a little bit of effort into it, maybe, with the small chance of these videos improving in quality over time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you learned anything, something. Thanks. Have a nice day.